Okay. I need to point out something very dangerous that Elbow has set up and Lydia feels rather smug about, but I don't think she realises the problem that she has actually seeded all across this country, which may see problems worse than she ever realised might occur here. And I think Elbow believes that monetary powers and AI are going to be the one thing that's going to help him follow through with all of this. And I highly doubt it, given that the amount of people, the amount of people that I have talked to across the country and that I see across the country that say back to me, people are listening, and people are listening very loudly, and they're willing to now speak up, and they're willing to now think about all of these changes that are coming, because they see this as a direct attack on their lifestyle, let alone their constitution. So this is getting very, very serious, and I don't think people like Lydia are aware of what they're seeding, and I don't think the Australian public are aware of how far this has already gone, and it's about to kick off in a way where I don't think this country's ever had this realisation before, and I don't think Elbow is prepared for the backlash that he is technically going to see across the board. And it's not something I can control. It's something I can educate them about in this communist takeover of what is their constitution. And we, the owners of this constitution, will just take our document and start all over again. We technically don't need to carry on with a bunch of criminals. We can go and take our document afresh and start all over again. And that's technically the reality here under God, King and country. So let's have a look at Lydia and some of these very scary words that seem to be mocking you in your total woke sleepiness.
We need to have a discussion about land back.
We need to have a discussion about fraud, deception, corruption, and a whole bunch of other stuff related to the consolidated revenue of the Commonwealth of Australia and its people, and how you've ripped them off, and how the government has set you up with corporations and seeded you with deeds of land trusts rather than land titles like everyone else. And you think we don't realise this stuff as we point out how you've taken national park trusts and being given land title by the states, going against all of the people of the Crown. You think you've already taken it back, Lydia, and you've already started to seed a hatred against your people for doing so and locking others out. And what happens when others just storm in and just take it from you, Lydia? And what happens when, as corporations, we bankrupt you and put you into insolvency and put you into courtrooms and sue your asses for all of these criminal actions that you've been party to, Lydia? And then what happens as the Crown, with a curial right and a prerogative right over and above everything you think and feel and say, as that Crown of which you're a senator, Lydia, an administrative senator, Lydia? What happens when we cancel ASIC and all of your corporations? All of your corporations, Lydia. We just cancel them, because that's what a king can do from his prerogative right in his constitution, where he is defined on the court record as the sovereign over everything you signed your world into, Lydia. And this is the reality as you believe you've conned these people in the States out of their land. And mark my words, Lydia, when all these farmers start to realise what you've done with your communists and your communist ideologies and your communist government, they're not going to be very happy, Lydia, and they're the ones with sons. They're the ones with farmers' guns. They're the ones armed to the teeth across this country that are already fucking pissed off with you. What do you think's going to happen, Lydia? I'm just issuing you a warning about what you've seeded for the years to come, because as a curial right, over and above everything in this Constitution, what if I just said they had the right to do all of that? I'm not going to give them that order, because in international law we stand in peace, Lydia, and in peace we won't put up with your criminal bullshit anymore. That's the bottom line. We won't put up with your war crimes. We won't put up with your treason. We won't put up with your undermining of the Constitution. We won't put up with your corporations. We won't put up with this foreign curial power undermining us to give you a power you think you have over and above us. It ain't happening, Lydia. There's a stark reality across the country when I go into towns and all I see are powerful white people and drunk Aborigines everywhere. And this is the stark reality, Lydia. You're the activist group and you haven't considered the larger population of Aborigine across this country that don't really want to front up against a really pissed off white Australia. This is the reality that you're sowed, Lydia. And I see it all across this land as I travel around. You've seeded a no so hard in the greater population that they really want to fuck you up. And if you continue down this path of corporations and stealing all of their land, a king can just come along and cancel ANZAC if that's what the people wish. And that cancels everything, Lydia. It removes everything that you ever dreamed you thought you could build. And that's the reality, Lydia, that you haven't considered is already sealed on the Supreme Court record. So I don't know what to say. Let's listen to some more garbage from this woman as she steals your land and mocks you for already doing it with Albo's greeny communist help.
One simple way to initiate land back is a moratorium on the sale of Crown land across this country.
Yeah, agreed. We should stop Aboriginal corporations from holding deed trust land titles. And we should give them to individual Aboriginals so that you could stop all of this activism and ripping off of the minority population that you are from inside your own population. Because this is what you've done, Lydia. You've seeded a stage where certain players of activists in your organisations get to steal and rip off all of the grants that you get from government at the cost of everyone else in your communities, at the cost of all these other Aboriginal tribes, because you're a bunch of activists. Yeah. So I agree. We have to cancel all Aboriginal corporations. We have to cancel all of them and stop them from being able to hold any land in the Commonwealth of Australia and reserve national parks back into the National Parks Trust so that they can be used by all Australians instead of having them sold out from underneath their feet to Aboriginal corporations who then think they have power and control over and above the people's land of the Commonwealth of Australia. I totally, wholly agree in this. We should limit the whole sale of land to Aboriginal corporations, full stop.
Once privatised, that land is locked away and is not coming back easily.
With a smug look on her face, she's telling all of you that almost half your country is now corporatised into Aboriginal land trusts, and she thinks that you're not getting it back from them easily. And as I just explained to all of you, this is a administration under the rules of usufruct that has helped this woman do this from a communist agenda while committing international war crimes as an administrator of what is ours. We are the naked owners of the Constitution as the Australian Imperial Crown. When we have our Constitution back, we reverse everything that is, and they lose. This is the bottom line, and all you need to do is stand up as the greater population across the country and say no fucking more, because the Australian Imperial Crown, much like its administrator before, has no qualms with every race around the world coming to live in this country at the pleasure of the Crown. And this is where your land titles are your land titles and your freehold are your freehold. And this is the very impact that you're finding this minority population is being seeded with, while it pushes you out and takes more than half of your land, including all of your national parks. And Lidia wholly thinks that this foreign administrating power is merging everything into them. And she's not fully aware of the fact that her children are going to face your children. And she's already seeded a condition of apartheid which will turn into a civil war. And I'm sorry, but this is something that I can't control. This is something they created, and this is something that you as white people don't put up with. This is something that, as ANZAC, you are the underdog, you always were. And when now the underdog is pulled out and asked to fight, it's kind of relative to look at who you were as warriors in your past and recognise the underdog always fucking wins. And this is where they have a real big fucking problem on the table, knowing this, because people like myself have already spent 15 years standing through this to go through the Supreme Court and put it on the Supreme Court of New South Wales court record. So Lidia does have a massive fucking problem in this land, in that a curial right means the right to raise a defence force and defend what is ours.
This land doesn't belong to the Crown. Come on.
She knows she's got the upper hand with the St Edward's Crown, but she also knows she has a problem with a federal red ensign and the real Australians on this soil. The ones that went to World War I and were willing to sacrifice 62,000 men just to get a job done. And if we're those kinds of men that are willing to die in those numbers just to see something through, she's got a problem in that those sons are here. And they're called farmers and miners and builders. And they're all across this country. You know, and they come from varying different backgrounds that all fought Nazis in World War II. She seems to think that this tiny little game at home is planning out so that the states will give them all their land and then not realise that the population's just going to fucking turn on them. Oh, it's going to be very hard to get back, is it, Lidia? But what happens when we just push you out of our constitution altogether, claim the whole entire lot for ourselves and cancel your corporations? What happens when these lawyers sue you? What happens when you're dragged before courts as corporations because you're suable persons at law under the Crown? Under the Crown, Lidia. Those corporations are registered where? In ASIC. And you think you're going to come along and undermine our executive branch of government when there's a king defined on the court record already stepping in and saying, no fucking way, my people are already going to step up to that and say no more. They're already telling me they're willing to pick up their arms, Lidia. Pick up guns against you, Lidia. Right? And I'm telling them they can't do that under international law. These people have a human right. They have slave rights. Right? Men, step back. You're peacekeepers. You're peace makers. Blessed are the peacemakers, Lydia, who came home to their constitution and realised the rot that was going on inside the house.
It never has. And it should be handed back to First Peoples, whose land it is.
First in time, first in law. Naked owners of the Constitution you're all bitching about belongs to the Australian Imperial Crown. We're the first in time. We're the ANZAC that created that Constitution. That lot of boys spent 62,000 lives defending your right to be sovereign tribes on the land next to them. 2,500 Aborigine went off to that war for the same reason, Lydia. You are a total disgrace to your own history and world history and our history because you believe and seed the information of communists. And if you think that we, Templar of old, are going to put up with your shit, you're sadly mistaken. Sadly mistaken. All of this activism, communism shit is gonna end, Lydia, because all of your corporations that have taken land are gonna come into question. There are lawyers across this country that are willing to now start questioning all of these things that have happened across the last 15 to 20 years of the undermining of our world for a minority population that just kept bleeding us for all of our wealth. You want reparations after you've already been given trillions of dollars and then stolen all our land? You didn't even think about the land you owned before 1966. You were just greedy and started forming corporations at the hand of Nazis. I wouldn't say Nazis, I'd say communists, Lydia. And if you think that we, the Templar of this world, are going to put up with this for much longer, you have to look at Canada and England and New Zealand and South Africa and all these other countries that are being fucked over by the same evil powers that you fell in with, Lydia, Lydia. And this is the stark reality across the world as this woke bullshit starts to fade away, isn't it? This is the stark reality across the world as this woke bullshit fades away and we start to realise that we've been attacked. And we've now awakened to the fact that we've been attacked. And we don't want to be attacked anymore. And when people realise they don't want to be attacked anymore, maybe they'll defend themselves, Lydia.
Treaty provides us with an opportunity to put everything on the table, to reset the framework and heal.
Reset the framework, i.e. your constitution, at which they now claim half of your land in corporations and land titles because the states gave away all of your national parks and set them up with freehold trusts, which means that they're in perpetuum, meaning that when one man dies, the rest of the tribe get to continue using the trust. And this is what they've set up against all of you as paupers in your own country. And the communists have come in and used the other race in the country to set up the next 100 years of their control. And this is what Lydia doesn't understand, that this is an actual long-term war game that's been going for many hundreds of years. And she's just fallen into the trap of playing into their hands, not realising the Spirit of God is greater than all of her shit. And this is the unfortunate truth here, is that she's seeding a war.
Peace treaties must be front and centre with every one of our nations to self-determine for themselves. We are not one homogenous group, as much as the colonial project would like us to be.
We are not the colonial project, Lydia. We are sons of the ANZAC that went to World War I and defended your right to be sovereign tribes on this land. if you want to ignore that and take this land from those people and tell them that this is war, recognize that those men were willing to spill 62,000 of their lives across foreign battlefields so that you may live free here at home. And if you want to attack them at home, I'm sure they're going to spill your blood all over this land, Lydia, and just take it back in the name of the King. And this is the unfortunate reality that you need to visualize, because I'm not going to make that choice. They will. That's up to them. It's their sons. They're the sons of the ANZAC. They're the true owners of the Constitution. They're the ones that got occupied by this foreign papist curial power. They're the ones that will stand up to all of you. And I'm sure at the cost of 62,000 lives in World War I'm sure that if it got to that extreme, they'd probably spill 100,000 lives this time just to save their sacred rights in God. And that's the unfortunate truth here, that none of this world is willing to accept in its wokeness.
We know treaties can be broken, and they have been. But we have an opportunity in this country right now to have treaties of the 21st century.
We also have an opportunity to define Kiskonan versus New South Wales 2021 a curial right and king of this constitution before the justices across this land. And at that same, then, could be said to be overseers of all of your native titles, then, with a prerogative right of royalty, Lydia. And then to say that it doesn't belong to the crown but hold crown titles, and then try to assume more than half the country at the hands of communists and foreign corporations such as Rainforest Alliance in a big Ponzi scam. You think you're going to get away with it in the long term is hilarious, given that you've been caught the fuck out at what you've been doing in a massive communist scandal. Massive communist scandal with foreign curial powers on our land, at which a king has the lordship over, because who has hold of all the land titles under a constitution, Lydia? And this is stark reality that you're coming to when these people realise that banks have fucked over their very own land titles, and then you seem to come along and believe they're all yours. I think you've already asked for a civil war, Lydia, and by the judgment of the voice of the people that I talk to, I think they're willing to die just to let their sons be free back on the land that they grew up on, instead of putting up with all of your communist agenda bullshit.
And we can learn all of the lessons from our brothers and sisters around the world. Treaty is what we make it. It has to come from the people. And the best part, you don't need a referendum for a treaty.
No, you just need to infiltrate the parliament of the people you want to treaty with, try and take all of their land in land titles with the help of the banks that occupy them, manipulate their minds, and then try and manipulate their executive branch of government so they're no longer in command of anything, and then therefore leaving them in a real poor state. And that's where you don't realise. You might go off into the bush and drink for 40 years. ANZAC will just get off their fucking asses, wipe everything out in the front of them, and take it back. And that's the reality you haven't realised in this game while you fuck around with our constitution.
just a government who is willing. Senate seats can be legislated. Recommendations can be implemented. Change can happen.
Yeah, the change you weren't expecting was the naked owner standing up to you and saying, enough is enough. We're going to start charging you with all the criminal offences that you've committed, starting with the treason that you openly committed on the Parliament floor to an administrating government you took an oath to. King via Casement 1917 must apply to them as it does apply to the Australian Imperial Crown, at which you've committed an act of treason too, given that it's our constitution which is under administration. Then there's all the war crimes that we can pull out while you've been fighting for human rights, and we could argue against certain people like the Human Rights Commissioner, who is a bumbling fool. This can all be brought before the highest realms of justice in the country, and I think you're all starting to realise that now from your activism state. It seems to be that way as Adam Bandt calls for more tanty instead of dealing with the facts on the table. You're a communist, Adam Bandt, and you've allowed the destabilisation of the Senate on behalf of a minority population to destabilise the greater Commonwealth of Australia and its national security. That surely is a serious offence from inside the office of a senator under oath. And the same could be said for Lidia herself. And these things really need to be addressed. We can't act as if a sovereign people can come into a parliament and destabilise it before it can treaty with it. That would be a serious joke on an international stage, and no self-determination at all as a people who should have acted diplomatically with that parliament instead of trying to undermine it as citizens from within, not realising what that citizenry actually meant. Isn't that correct, Pauline Hanson? So let's continue on.
This is our chance to mature as a nation, to have the hard conversations with each other and ourselves, to confront the racism we have all been socially conditioned to accept, internalise and perpetrate.
How does fuck off sound? They occupied our crown. They occupied our constitution. They oppressed our people. They changed our world. They bankrupted our society. They fucked over our things. So in this respect, you want us to heal? Then fix it all and put it all back the way it was before you stole from it and ripped it off. That's how we feel. We're sick and tired of propping up a world you seem to believe exists, which only exists off our back. And that's the reality, Lidia. If you think you can turn around and take our world from us with the help of a bunch of communists, then you really are opening yourself up to some sort of war where I don't think your families are prepared for the repercussions of a greater, larger Australian community that you have really pissed off.
To sit with the uncomfortable truth, see it and grow from it. Because right now, there is an ongoing colonisation, but no colonisers.
An ongoing colonisation, but no colonisers. Does that mean the Constitution exists, but nobody's at home? But we're here, Lidia, on the Supreme Court record of New South Wales. Unfortunate for you. And do you mean the harsh reality of you accepting all these corporations and taking land titles, trusts in your corporations that a king can come along and cancel? Is that the fear that the colonisation is nobody home? We didn't colonise, we settled. That's very different. And we didn't go away. We defended your right to exist in World War I as ANZAC. and New Zealanders joined us, and Maori joined us, and Aborigine joined us, all in our battle to defend this country from the powers of be.
Racism, but no racists. And when we begin to tell the truth, that we can heal together as a nation, and from this healing, treaty will bring peace.
The harsh reality, the awakening of the Australian Imperial Crown. Hello, we're home in our Constitution, Lidia. Who are you going to treaty with? A foreign curial power that's a foreign curial power defined on the Supreme Court of New South Wales court record as being foreign and not the naked owner of the Constitution that has a curial right to that Constitution to defend it at all costs, to defend it at all costs as the Lord of all the lands, Lidia, the Lord of all the lands. That's the kingship over the entire Constitution, Lidia, the entire Constitution. And you thought it had gone away? No. It had never gone away. We've been watching you attempt to undermine it with your communist buddies until the point where you actually committed serious criminal offences within the Senate, the Parliament, and outside of the Parliament in the general public, Lidia. And you scrambling around and beating up women and yelling out war and all these things after you've taken land titles in corporations across the land at the hands of these communists, we can see a direct attack, Lidia, a direct attack. And when you call out war, we're ready to charge your ass with every crime you've committed under the sun.
So I invite you all to walk with me. Embark on this journey. Stand with our people. Stand up for what really matters.
No, we're not going to stand up for all your woke retarded bullshit anymore, Lidia, because what really matters is national security and national defence. And that means real men in a real army to defend the towns and cities of this land from foreign powers that may want to attack either white Australia and constitutional Australia or even tribal Australia, as was attempted in World War I. And we think that over and above all your woke retard is the importance of national security and the defence of our very lands for our very children. And if you think for a moment that you're inviting us into your lands when we already live here and have children here, and most were born here, and a lot came here and had children here, and the Crown is larger than the Commonwealth of Australia, then there's a serious issue if you can't comprehend this, Lidia. Like, we're not going away. That's the harsh reality here, in that we came home to defend, and we think the most important thing here is the defence of this Constitution for national security, not the mockery that you're making it so that it falls into WEF hands because you, as a people, are sheerly incapable of defending things on an international stage like the ADF do in international countries, Lidia. Have you got an Aboriginal defence force ready, Lidia, to defend the lands from foreign interests, Lidia? Or are you just the lapdog of those foreign interests while they undermine you, us and everyone else in this land on behalf of those WEF partners?
Demand actual change, not tokenistic gestures. And we do have a lot of work to do. And we need to do it together. We need to do it now.
That's right, Lidia. We are doing it now. We started 15 years ago as we worked towards the curial right that we had in our Constitution. And now that we've defined that curial right on the Supreme Court of New South Wales court record, we just won't put up with your woke bullshit anymore. We have a curial right to raise an armed force in this land to defend the Constitution of this land. And these peacekeepers know that as long as we keep the peace, Lydia, and we have the full right to join them in a battlefield to defend the very constitution and the land that it is surrounding this constitution, Lydia, that is defined in that curial right. And that's something that you haven't considered here, is the defence of a land internationally and the curial right that would define that land before it could even be constituted. And having that already put on the Supreme Court of New South Wales court record already gives me that right to raise a standing army in this country to defend the very country, its people, and the Constitution, and likely with the help of these foreign curial powers as peacekeepers, Lydia, as peacekeepers to this whole fucking debacle that you haven't worked out yet.
If we do this through respect and understanding, we can create peace. This is the start of a revolution, of change and justice. Join us.
Yeah, nah. Fuck all your rhetoric. This country needs defending. It needs a standing army to defend itself from foreign powers. It needs a standing army to defend Aborigine and white Australia from those foreign powers such as the powers that Albo works for. And as an administrator, I've demonstrated him to be a peacekeeper in your debt fucking cycle. And I think Lydia's playing on that debt cycle as her people consume all of the land at the hand of Albo, because there's a government that's giving them all the grants to take up all the land in land corporations. And she just said that was hard to reverse. Well, if she's got no one to defend her land but a foreign power that is obligated to international law, what happens when a king and his men return home to the house and the Constitution and realise all the fraud and crimes that have been going on? And as ANZAC and sons of ANZAC just won't put up with bullshit and just pull the guns out and start wiping everything out in front of us. And that's a harsh reality that no one seems to look at, that Australians are full well capable of doing this thing. And I don't think Aboriginal Australia, even Batten Island, that behind the covers, we're already half ready to do such a thing. And that's a problem in the grand scheme of things when Albo doesn't realise that half the country is against him and his communist ideologies. And as they start to realise what is actually going on, a hatred's going to seed across this country. And across this country, they're going to need an international defence force. And I'm offering Lydia, as what she calls to be sovereign, to be the first one to put up her men to defend the country. Come on, where's your defence force, Lydia? You're the sovereign nation people, aren't you? You're First Nations. Where's your first defence forces? Where's your maps? Where's your constitutions? Where's your ability to command men in armies? Where's your curial standing on an international stage? Where's all of these things that make you a sovereign, Lydia? And none of this stuff you've considered. None of this stuff, none of your tribes have considered. You all think you can just plod along on the ground like little children and everything will be all right until the bombs start dropping next to you and you're running to the people next to you. Oh, they're dropping bombs like they did in World War II. Right? And this is another reality that you haven't considered. The big bad boogeyman is a lot bigger than all of us, and he's not even in the country. Right? So what happens when they send the big bomber planes over to teach lessons like they did in World War II? Not prepared for any of this shit, Lydia, as you stand on a stage and declare activist war instead of reality war, where a country actually needs a king and his men to defend it.